Hey everybody, Bill in Virginia. Welcome back. So this episode, I'm going to be working on the bridge scene a little bit. I'll talk about that piece of paper sack here in a little while. But down here I have started to do the water scene. Very basic scenery down here. I've put in a base of white glue down in the lower area so that I could seal along the hardboard. And that already had a good coat of Sculptamold and plaster. Just want to make sure that nothing is going to sink through. So into that I embedded dirt, some rocks, and the rocks sort of line up with the rocks here. So just sort of a bit of a sweeping curve, and the imagination can kind of align some of those rocks with some of the outcrops. On the slope, I've did wood glue, a couple of passes, just put different soil and other stuff on it. I will come back in, spray it down with isopropyl alcohol, add additional white glue, diluted, build up along here so that this is not visible as hardboard, but would look more like that because all of this will be under water at some point in the future. Hopefully this episode, we'll see if I can get to it yet. Over here, I am going to fix a mistake. I talked about it in some other videos that I should have put in a bridge abutment before I really went crazy on scenery. So if you look, you can see I've got a screw put in here. I've got another one right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up a batch of Sculptamold. And now you can see that this has a bit of a slope on the cut here. It's fairly straight up to here, and then it does angle back. So I'm only going to use a little bit of Sculptamold to build up a little area coming across here and then back up. It's only going to be about that, that big as far as for height. And depth, maybe a quarter to half inch at max up at the top and then down. These screws will help it bite in. So when I get the Sculptamold put in, I will build a very small abutment. I'll be able to shape it and make it in smooth, and then I can come back in and I can do a little bit of carving on it just to make it look like some fairly sizable blocks were used to make that. And then of course have a little angle coming out here. I will do the same thing over on this side. Kind of hard to see again, but you can see there's already that little pocket that I sort of left when I was building this up to put in the other abutment. So I'll do the same thing over on this side. Haven't added the screws yet. I'll drop it down, and this one will go down. This one will actually go down maybe about 2.5, 3 inches. Because then it hits a little ledge on this and comes out. So we'll see how this is going to work. Like some projects, they work well. And then some others, like the original tunnel liner, quickly go into the garbage can, and then I fix other mistakes. But I think this will work. So let's get started. And the abutment is going to be the first thing that I'm going to do. So let's see. Let's see what I can do with that. So about 15 minutes has passed, and I have the abutment in place. This is just Sculptamold, and I packed it around those 2 screws so that it will hold. It's not going to go anywhere. What I'll do now is I'll do some carving on it before it sets too much, and with this, it'll stay workable for a while. Got the other side in pretty good shape. Kind of keep the shadow out. I'll paint it and weather it after I get done. But I am happy with how that's turned out. Yeah, I still should have done it before I put the bridge in, but I'll take it. The results don't look too bad. This one over here will be a little bit bigger, but we'll get to that here in just a little bit as well. So Let me do a little carving. I will make it look, like there's some blocks that have been put into place, and we'll go from there. Well, a couple of minutes later, and I have the blocking carved. What I ended up using was just a head of a nail, and just kind of put it in, rotated it, scribed it. Doesn't have to be perfect. I will let the Sculptamold completely cure. Well, maybe not 100%, but at least a day, before I come back in and I smooth it ever so slightly to kind of get rid of some of those ridges that you see from where I did the carving. I won't remove them completely, but just enough to make it look like, blocks. And then I can come back in with some dilute paint, and I'll probably use that same color that I used for the tunnel portal, but I will dilute it so it's more of a wash on the bridge abutment. And then I'll get out some of my stain that I still have left and reblend the abutment into the scenery. Get rid of a few of those areas where I've got some white kind of coming over, but that worked out pretty good. I will do the next one and see how that turns out. Well, I am wrapping up a Monday evening. So I've got the second abutment put in. I'm going to let it dry for a few minutes, and then I will do a little bit of carving to it and then just let it sit. But that's actually turned out well. So I'm happy with the results here. Once it all hardens, I kind of smooth it up a little bit more. I'll fill in that gap with a little bit of ballast or some just Woodland Scenics brown to kind of blend it in from the edge up. So I'm pleased with how this is looking. You can kind of see some of the etch marks on that one. So we'll let that dry, and hey, my bridge has abutments. So I will get those both taken care of, painted, stained, a little bit more carving, probably tomorrow evening. Then I can start to work lower. But we'll see how this turns out after a little while. Well, I got a little bit of carving done on this. And like with the other one, I will just let it dry, and then I can get some of the nubblies off of it. But tomorrow should be dry enough that I can come back in, figure out how I'm going to paint it. So more to come. So it's been about 24 hours since I did the abutments and put the Sculptamold in. You can see that compared to the last video, it's got more texture to it. So what I've been doing here already is I've been taking a 1/8 inch piece of balsa wood and just putting it in and running it completely across, and then using my camera hand and just sort of pressing on it underneath. The Sculptamold is still damp enough that it takes a shape, so you can kind of see the lines from that, just kind of at different intervals along here. That doesn't remove the grooves that I cut into it last night using the head of the nail or my putty knife. It just sort of gives it a little bit more definition. For the side, you can see how that looks. I took just a scrap piece and came in and just, press. Not 100%, equal distant, but it just gives it a nice look. And I did that on the other side, so I'm happy with how that looks. Other thing that I did, come in, and I used a toothpick and just very gently scored along where there should be the break between the rock and the abutment. It doesn't have to be pronounced. Weathering and highlighting will show that a little bit more. So I'm going to take that same technique and I'm going to go over here and do this one real quick. Just don't think I'm going to be able to get a camera set up to be able to show it because I'd be blocking the view, but I'll show you what it looks like afterwards. And I have already come in again with the toothpick on the side and just sort of etched a little bit just to give that break between the two. Now I'm going to use that piece of balsa wood and give it some additional texture. Well, just a few minutes later, and I have this one pretty well done as well. See the nice texture on it. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start mixing up some acrylic paints to give the abutments a wash. Even though it's wet, they will take the color, and then I will dig out my brown stains and I'll do a little staining around the abutments. Should be able to have those done this evening. Really not a whole lot more to do on it. Just paint it a little bit, give it a little weather, and move on. All right, the abutments are painted, sort of an off beige sand dune color with a little bit of the hammered iron mixed in. Same thing over here. Brings out the nice details on it. Now what I'm going to do is I've got what little bit of summer oak I've got left. This is pretty much gone, but I kept this just for a little bit of use. Once I do this last little bit, I think it's done. I'm going to get rid of it. I'll let it dry out and dispose of it. But let's paint up the rock. I'm going to use that small detail brush just to kind of go around this, get rid of the white, and blend it in a little bit. We'll see how it looks here in a couple minutes. So a little later here, painting is done. I've added stain in and around and put in additional ballast up on top. So I think I'm going to call that good. Did it over here as well. So yeah, I think that's going to be it for the abutments. That was a fun little project. Didn't take long, and I think I've still got to add a little bit more vegetation over there, maybe another grass tuft or so. But that's pretty much a wrap on that for the bridge. Now I can start focusing lower. The next thing that I'm going to start doing is adding ground cover under the trestle. And I think this is going to take a while because I'm going to be applying glue, and I'm going to be starting at the top and working my way down, doing under each bent and then moving on to the next one. So I'm going to get started on that. I'll just apply glue. I'll sprinkle ground cover, some rock, soil type stuff on that. Not very thick. And then once I get it all done, I'll spray it with isopropyl alcohol, come back in with dilute white glue just to make sure everything's got a good grab, and then add in some greens and some other woodland scenics material on top of that. So let's see how that's gonna look. So I'm making some progress. I have most of the debris under the trestle, rock, dirt, a few chunks of wood here and there. This has been glued down. So I did a combination of carpenter's glue and white glue. Liberally soaked the Sculptamold base, sprinkled it on multiple layers, added more glue, sprinkled on more things, sprayed it down with isopropyl alcohol, added more glue, added more top coating. So it should be reasonably well stuck together when it dries. So next steps are going to be adding in some grass tufts, maybe a little bit of super tree material, kind of a little bit farther out from the trestle. Real trestles did not allow a lot of growth too close to them, fire hazards and whatnot. So some grass here and there and some small bushes are going to be the extent of what I'm going to put in close to the trestle. So let's do a little bit more before I wrap up this video. So I've gotten a little bit more done tonight, and I'm just about ready to call it. I've added a little bit more ground cover, some subtle greens, some of the darker soil, which actually looks nice because it looks wet. And well, right now it is because it's in glue. But I also put in a number of the plants that look like they grow in a wet environment. Got those last week when I was down in North Carolina. So, you know, I think I'm going to wrap up this video with this one here. And then the next video will show adding grass in and around some of these areas, a little bit more down here. Some grass, some of the haircut materials from the pine trees, basically, underbrush in a few spots along here, not too close to the trestle, but kind of in some of the areas. Then I can add a little bit of super tree material as well. And then I put the water in. So I've got a fair amount of detail work to do down there yet, and I've got to make trees. So that is going to be on the next video. So you know what, I'm going to say that's it for this one. So keep having fun on your layouts. Until next time.